Are you following me?
I was gonna see if you have a pencil.
So you guys can get Ron. There's one more coming, but he went to the nurse real quick.
Alright, awesome. Alright, guys.
Like, cause I have to take quiz, so I
Alright,
can't
so
share how much.
I'm Connor,
I'm
Can I
Micaela.
borrow this?
and we're here to talk to you about a little economics. Alright, so by show of hands, who here likes to make money, spend money, or just have money? Yeah, everyone should be raising their hands. Well, we're going to teach you today a little about economics.
So does anyone know what economics is? Anyone want to take a shot at it? Anything? Yeah, you got it.
Maybe just like has something to do. But like
That's true.
you take something from like economy, does that mean like around the world?
It is.
Yes.
I know someone for economy.
Yeah, you want to take a shot?
It's like about, I guess it's about like stocks and stuff, but and like how money goes around.
Yeah,
You wanna try?
that's pretty close.
Yeah, it's basically just how households and companies organize who's going to sell what and who's going to buy what. So what you're going to use your money to buy and what companies are going to sell what products to who.
It's just the interaction between like households and companies just in the economy. So we're going to start by teaching you guys a little about supply and demand just between the households and the companies. So does anyone know really what, like, want to give a shot at a baseline definition of supply and demand? All right, what's your name?
Orion.
Arian, let's hear it.
So the supply is like what the company has, and the demand is like what the households want, and
Yes, basically it. So supply is like what the company has and what they're willing to supply at a certain price point. So if the price is, let's say $10, the company would be willing to supply 10 units of that good. And then demand is just a household and how much of a certain good they'd be willing to buy at a certain price point. So the same thing. And there's graphs to help us analyze the two lines. So this is the supply curve. So as you see, as the price goes up, the quantity that the company is willing to supply to the market goes up too. And so that's a positive relationship. And then the demand curve is a negative relationship. So the higher the price is, the less of a quantity that the households are willing to buy something to the market. Let's say the price for shoes were $1 million. Well, no one would be willing to buy that shoe because it's such an irrational price. But if shoes were $1, then a lot of people would be willing to buy that shoe. So it's basically just like the price point and the quantity that either the household is willing to buy or the companies are willing to supply. And
it
then
makes sense if you just think about it logically. Like if something's really expensive, you're not going to want to buy it. So that's why the quantity demanded is really low if the price is really high. But if the price goes down over here, then the quantity that you're demanding is high because it's cheap and people want to buy cheap. Yeah.
So would it be like the price that the companies are selling it for it has to be over a certain limit, but then also the people who are buying it that has to be in there a certain limit as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're gonna
sometimes nobody's gonna buy nothing.
so we're gonna show you what that is. So you can draw that.
Yeah.
So we're going to show a graph about them both together, about them combined. And you'll see how the two lines actually interact with each other.
So as a reminder, P is price, Q is quantity. Just keep that in mind. So I just took the supply curve from here. That's still the same. And the demand is this one. Looks exactly the same. And we just put them together on the same graph.
So as you can see on this graph, the point where the two intersect is called the equilibrium point. I'll write that right here.
That's what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So equilibrium is basically the price that makes the buyers the happiest and the companies the happiest too, because it's just like this is where the companies are willing to sell the good, and the companies are willing to sell the good, and the households are willing to buy the good at this price right here. So that's the price where it keeps everyone happy. And does anyone want to give a guess at what can affect the price point and actually move the graphs up and down the lines. Ariane? Yes. Yeah, but like, what would actually affect? Do you have a guess of what would affect it to
The
either
supply.
move it this way or this way to affect the
Like
price point?
the income of the buyers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was really good.
Yeah, so the income of the buyers, that affects the demand curve, and if the income is higher, the demand would shift to the right, would shift more right here, which would mean that the households are more willing to buy a good because their income's higher.
So if the demand increases, like you said, if your income goes up, obviously you have more money to buy more things. So then, as you said, that means your demand increases. So an increase is always a shift rightward.
Mhm.
So that's why we shifted the demand. Since you have more income, you can buy more things. We shifted it to the right. So this is the new demand curve. Can anyone tell me what happens to the price of the good?
It goes up.
Yeah, because this was our original price, and then once we got more money, our income went up, we could buy more goods. This is the new equilibrium point, the price which buyers and sellers agree on. The price went up. So this was our first price, this was our second price, and it increased when our demand increased.
And then you can also see that when the price went up and the demand curve shifted to the right, the households are more willing to buy even more goods, and then that means that the companies are more willing to supply the goods because it's a higher price for them. All right, so we're going to show you guys on a more individual basis with the supply and demand curves. So you okay with us erasing it?
So first we're going to talk about the shifting of the demand curve, which we already kind of touched on.
But we're going to take it more into depth.
So there's 3 things that can shift the demand curve. So increase the demand or decrease demand. So you already said, what's your name?
Ryan?
Okay, so Ryan already said income, which makes sense because if your income increases, then you will be able to demand more goods and buy more goods. Does anyone have any other ideas of what would shift your demand?
Okay, Ryan.
The amount that's being sold or like the stock left, so the lower the stock, the more that's being bought, the higher the price will go.
That actually is a result
Yeah.
of a shift. So that does happen. But is there any other reason you can think of that will cause you to change your demand? Yeah.
The quality of
True. So
Yeah.
we can kind of wrap that up into what we call taste. So like if you just prefer, let's say like McDonald's over Burger King, you're going to demand a higher quantity of McDonald's just because your taste is different and you think that the quality of McDonald's is better than Burger King for whatever reason.
I want to draw a graph so I can see the individual changes. And tastes work both way too. Like if you really like burgers, then your demand for the burger industry is going to be higher. And if your taste for hot dogs, you really don't like hot dogs, that means like the demand is going to be a lot less for hot dogs.
So does anyone have any idea what the third one is? Anything? Yeah.
Alright.
Where it's located, how far it's there.
That will kind of go into taste. So like if you're closer to McDonald's than you are to Burger King, you're going to prefer McDonald's. So the last one is just the number of buyers. So if there's, let's say, a bunch of people move to Howard County, there's going to be a lot more people demanding to go to GCS. A lot more people are going to want to go to GCS. But also, the other way, if a lot of people move out of Howard County, the demand for going to GCS is going to be lower. It just makes sense because the amount of people can increase or decrease.
And just another thing with taste, it's not just like, we kind of explained it using Burger King, McDonald's, but it's not just like your taste buds, it's like anything you like. So if you liked clothes a lot, and it's just, you'd be more inclined to buy clothes. So I know it's called taste, and we explained it with burgers.
It's just your, like, opinion.
Yeah, it's a very broad category
Yeah.
for demand. It shifts a lot.
Not just
so,
food.
Yeah.
That's everything.
Mhm.
So now I'm going to show you just quickly how these can change right or left. So, as I said, for the amount of buyers for GCS, let's say a bunch of people moved out of Howard County, then a lot of people would probably leave GCS. So, does anyone remember so if the amount of buyers decreases, which way do you think the demand curve shifts?
It gets cheaper.
So do you know which way this line shifts?
It shifts
Either left or right?
left.
Yeah, good job. So the demand decreases, so the demand will go leftward. So this was the first demand curve. And then what'd you say happened to the price?
Price would go down.
Yeah.
Because they want more people to buy it. There's not as many left.
Yeah. So this was the original price. And then since a lot of people moved out of Howard County, then the demand shifted leftward because there's not as many people demanding it, and the price went down. Good job. So another one, income. So let's say the average income in Howard County goes down. Then what do you think would happen to the demand curve? Yeah.
Goes left.
Yeah, good job. So let's do one with taste. Let's just go back to the hamburger example. So let's say a lot of people started liking Burger King over McDonald's. Or no, let's say that a lot of people started liking burgers over hot dogs. So let's say this is the market for hot dogs. So a lot of people stopped buying hot dogs altogether. They didn't want any more hot dogs. How did the demand shift for hot dogs? Yeah. Yeah, good job. Right.
All right, so before we move on to the supply curve, is there any questions about demand or any comments on it?
Cool.
All right, cool. All right, so now we're gonna get into the supply curve and what can shift that. So I know we asked about the demand curve, but do you guys have any thoughts on what can shift the supply curve? All right, Ariane?
If the demand is higher, the supply curve will go lower, and if the demand is lower, the supply curve will go higher.
Sorry?
If the demand is higher, then the supply will go down probably, and if the demand is lower, then the supply will go higher.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an effect of what happens, but that doesn't actually shift the curves.
What would lead to that?
Yeah, so Ryan, what do you think would shift them?
The price that they're selling it for and the amount of money people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, it's also kind of like an effect of the other shifts, but that doesn't actually shift the curve.
This is on video.
I'm educating everyone.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. All right, so supply shifts. All right, so the first supply shift I'm gonna talk about is called input prices. And that's just, let's say we're talking about the market for t-shirts. And let's say we're talking about only cotton t-shirts. So if the price of cotton went up a ton, then that'd make the suppliers, that would shift the supply curve to the left, because it'd make the suppliers wanna produce the t-shirts a lot less because it costs them so much money to actually make the t-shirts, and that also make them need to sell the t-shirts for a higher price, as you can see. Sorry, so now that I said that, does anyone want to take any other guesses of what can also ship them? All right, what's your name?
Aiden,
All right, Aiden, what's your guess?
how long it takes to make it?
Yeah, it's kind of almost an input price kind
Yeah.
of thing, because you have to pay workers to make that product, and if it's taking a long time to make it, then you have to pay the workers more, so that counts as the input price. But yeah, it's a good.
Because if it
That's
takes a
good
long
input.
time to make something, you're not gonna want to make a lot of them. You're not gonna have the resources to make a lot of them.
Yeah, and then, so kind of on an input kind of thing, but technology. So if we're talking about t-shirts again, this is pretty easy to talk about. Let's say that there's a new machine that makes making t-shirts super easy. It's just, they can produce a ton of t-shirts in a short amount of time super cheaply. Well, that shift the supply curve rightward, because that makes it less expensive to produce the t-shirts, which is kind of the input thing, and also it's a lot easier to do it, a lot less labor intensive, and it's a lot quicker to do it, so it's a lot more efficient. then shift the supply curve leftward, which means that they're going to supply more t-shirts to the market, and it's going to be at a lower price. You can see that right here. And then thirdly, we can talk about what shifts the supply curve as the number of sellers. Like we talked about the number of buyers for the demand curve, but when we're talking about the number of sellers, so let's get away from t-shirts. We talked enough about them. Who here likes ice cream? Everyone's heard of Ben and Jerry's?
Everyone loves ice cream.
All right, let's say we're talking about ice cream market, and a big producer of ice cream like Ben and Jerry's suddenly goes out of business. Catastrophic. That'd make the supply curve shift leftward, because Ben and Jerry's a big producer of ice cream. It'd make there'd be a lot less ice cream in the market now, and that'd shift price of ice cream higher, and also it'd shift it leftward because there's gonna be a lot less quantity of ice cream in the market. So that's the third one, and then the fourth one's a little bit more confusing. It's called expectations. So
We're talking about price expectations
Yeah.
here. So, Connor, can I explain?
yeah. So when we're talking about expectations on the supplier side, we're basically saying like the company thinks that let's go back to t-shirts. So the company thinks that the price of t-shirts is gonna decrease in 3 months, and it's gonna decrease by a lot. But right now it's at the normal price that they like selling it at. So when that happens, the company is gonna start to supply more t-shirts to the market right now because they want to sell more t-shirts at the higher price. But it's also confusing because what happens is when they start to supply more t-shirts right now, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because that'll actually shift the supply curve rightward, and that itself will make the price go down from before. So that's just that's a shift in the market, but it's almost self-fulfilling by the company.
Basically, we're just saying if you expect that the price of t-shirts is going to go up to $100 right now or later, you're going to want to wait to supply those t-shirts to get the higher price, the $100, until the price goes to $100. So let's say the price is $10 right now, but in the future it's going to be $100.
And we're a company, so we want to sell
Yeah,
the
we're
t-shirt
the
at a higher
company.
price.
So we want to get the $100 for our t-shirt because that's more money. So we're not going to want to sell our t-shirts right now because we would only get $10 for our t-shirts. We want to get $100 for our t-shirts. So we want to wait until we can get $100. So right now we're going to restrict our supply so we can get the $100 for our t-shirts later. So in that case, since it's a decrease in supply because we want to wait to get the $100 for each t-shirt, we would
Now-
shift it left.
And what really happens, you can see when they decide to take the t-shirts that they're selling right now out of the market, that makes the supply go down and the price go up. So it's actually a self-fulfilling prophecy by the companies that are actually affecting the market. So now that's kind of the supply and demand in a nutshell, and you can see how the curve shifts and how they affect the price of it. Does anyone have any questions on the supply or demand or just anything that shifted?
Okay, so now we're going to do an activity. So
How many?
we're going to get in partners. We're going to do groups of 2. So I think we're going to have maybe 5 groups.
Yeah, 5 groups of 2. And the activity is, so you and your partner, you're gonna work in a group, and you're gonna try and think of 6 things that can shift either the supply curve or the demand curve, leftward or rightward anyway. You wanna find 6 things. It can be any combination, 4 for supply, 2 for demand. And then after you come up with them with your partner, we're gonna have you guys come up here and kind of give a very brief explanation on it and see.
You can write them on the board.
And we can see what you came up with, and then we can get your opinions on it, and we can help you with.
So an example would be, so we're going to divide you up. Okay, so let's do you 2 together, you 2 together, you 2 in the back together, you 2 together, and you 2 together. So just get with your partner, and on a piece of paper you can write them down first. And so an example, so you guys are going to be doing demand.
Oh,
You
no,
guys.
they can do any combination.
Okay, so you're just coming up with factors that would shift either of the curves. So an example for supply would be what we just said, like the price will go up in the future, so we want to restrict the price, we want to restrict our supply now. For demand, we can say the number of buyers, like this pool example, if a bunch of people leave Howard County, then the demand will shift by.
And I know that we already gave a bunch of examples, and that's gonna be, you might think it's gonna be hard to come up with stuff, but in reality, there's so many things that would shift each curve, leftward, rightward, or any which way.
You can use any product, any business, wherever you
Yeah,
want.
you can get as creative with it as you want. There's no wrong answers at all, so you can say the most ridiculous thing, and honestly, it'll probably shift one of the curves.
So
You'll
we'll
see
give
that a
you a
lot.
couple minutes and just come up with whatever you can think of, and then we'll write them on the board and talk about them. So.
Really basically what, like, not too long ago, I watched like an entire like video on this, like for so basically, what did I try to do, what they kind of had, basically you had you have one, just write down, that's what it's like, yeah, it's kind of like, but like, so what I have here is like the guy and seller, like this one and then the buyer, so basically what I'm probably gonna do is what they're
When I say for like people
buyers probably know their income are really good. Some of them have higher income than the others, meaning that they're gonna want to buy it, but they're having to sell at different prices. The sellers, the buyers,
they're gonna have
the
more.
sellers then have a lot different prices that they sell it at.
Material, that basically means like
And then, I mean, in some cases, you have kind of work the way the person who sells it will buy the stuff for as cheap, and the person with the most will buy the things with the most.
No.
And what happens here usually is that what's gonna happen is we're gonna have another one, which is basically what happens.
Anything, just get creative.
So basically, let's say,
how much people already have it,
cost of what they
or how much people.
So that's how people do it. But the one example is like where the price goes up. So let's say the Fort Myers can't buy it. They're meaning there's only 3 sellers are only gonna get profit. Meaning the sellers are gonna get profit. They're including it, so that's
How much money? Let me just say. So I can pay.
If they have it, they won't
So
buy
on
it.
demand, how much people need, which basically means like sometimes we don't.
As I was just
Sometimes.
I forgot the French word for chatterbox. Amazon is ruining
yeah, so that this would be
Like,
right.
there are things that
So,
really
Whoa, whoa.
you know, right?
Watch Amazon Sam brought you, and then he put his phone in his locker and put cameras in
can't afford anything, so it's buy, and the one, that one can't sell to anyone who's willing to buy this price. This price is going to go, the price for this one is going to go down. And then make some. I have it over here. So,
Alright, so I got how much people need it. I got
How many
that.
people already have?
No, no.
You got, taxes, right?
We need taxes, or else this wouldn't be here.
No, it wasn't. Private people.
No, the government built this.
Taxes, taxes
They're
for
not, if it's
economics. Put taxes down.
Start looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take them to your big
What?
Take it and run. Take it and run. Shut up.
Really goes first. Really goes. That's an Apple one.
Really goes, bro. I got my new brown
Wait, guys. Follow me on TikTok.
Got my new
Why
cardboard
dog?
shoes with some
Follow me on Trash.
Follow me on TikTok. Why dog? Follow me on Instagram.
Follow him on
_
TikTok.
_
Hashtag
Follow me
Guys, it's really good. Trash _
Follow me on Twitter.
Trash _
Follow me on.
Follow me on Instagram.
Number of wires? It looks a tape. It looks number of wires.
Wait, I should headshot that.
Like the iPhone 11.
You know how the 11 Pro looks ugly?
I know.
The 11 Pro looks ugly. I think really should get it. It might match his outfit.
My outfit is ugly. I'm wearing the green. I'm wearing the same thing. Okay, what's underneath?
Mr. Black told me to take it off. Mr. Vaughn didn't tell me. Is that a smart one? I'm gonna tell on you for selling things out of your wallet.
Alright guys, you ready?
Kind of.
Alright, we're gonna start with Drew right here. What's your name? We're gonna start with Drew and Eva. You guys come up here and let's see what you have.
You can write what you got.
You write what you got, present it.
No.
You use the right side.
You can write them over there.
We can erase that.
They got another one.
We're gonna do this. So we're gonna have you all just come up and just write what you have down. But write your three best things that you have down, and then we'll go through them
So
all.
let's have one person from each group come up and write their thing. Get in line. One person, nominate one person, come up from your group.
Oh wait. The price. Wait. Think of something that's made out of something.
Well, the price.
Price not cheese.
Well, no,
You're going up and
Write it down.
Oh, my bad.
That's pretty great handwriting.
The price
No worries.
Just throw down whatever you have.
What do you mean?
Why do you guys smell?
And then
Are your best two ideas? You have to write down everything.
writing
the price.
Okay.
goes the first person goes
Oh.
up.
The price
What a patch.
Alright, write wherever you want.
So the price goes down.
Yeah, you go
That
up.
could be another one.
Then they write taxes. Write taxes.
Yeah, it's my
And the next one is the buyer still, the buyer.
It's not bad, it's not bad.
See what you got.
Oh, you made it way
The
worse.
price of the peaches goes.
Ryan, does your group have a nominee to write up your idea?
Yeah, we're still.
You can just write up whatever you
Alright, you
think.
know
Wow.
I didn't put
Alright,
words
it's my
in.
question. Wait. Are these groups?
Renegade.
I just think you give yourself right now.
Wait, what is sellers? The sellers make profit, so they raise the price.
Make a profit from peaches.
And then peaches, so they raise the price.
Why are you so-
No one wants to buy it. Lower it again. Well, they make toast.
It's not bad.
Glue.
No, but like.
So you ate the candy cane, that's my mouth.
No, I ate a Sharpie.
How you ate?
Are you right?
Not like Winston.
Look at their first one. That's so low.
Yes. Alright, let's finish
I'm not
up.
even sure.
What the heck?
Yes.
Ryan
I'm
told
not
me
sure.
about that.
Alright, let's see
Alright,
Ryan.
Sellers make.
Wow.
Sorry.
You dropped my
Megan.
I didn't know that.
So you raise it and no one buys it for them.
Alright, so we're just gonna keep going while Ryan continues to write. So, we're gonna start with this one, price. So, if you remember our graph with both curves, remember price, quantity, and then the supply and the demand. So, a shifting of the supply or demand is not caused by a change in price. It causes a change in price. So remember how we started with this point as our price at equilibrium. Remember the price that both buyers and sellers agree on? So if any of these shift, let's say the demand increases and shifts rightward, that changes the price. But it will never, a price change will never cause a shift. It'll just be a result of something shifting. So for example, in this case, the demand shifts rightward. So the price increases. So,
And then also, so she was talking about like how the demand curve when it shifts, it changes the price. But if we're just looking at price, because that's what they thought was shifted, when we're talking about the price, so this is the price that both the buyers and sellers agree upon. But when you just want to look at a different price point, so let's say like this is $10, and then this would be $5. So at $5, I'm just gonna draw it straight out from here. You see here, it's gonna hit the supply, then it's gonna go out here, it's gonna hit the demand. So at $5, let's say that this is 5 units and this is 10. This is saying that at $5, the suppliers are only willing to supply 5 units of that good because they're not gonna be receiving enough money to supply more. And at a lower price, the households are going to demand more of that good because obviously they want to pay less money to get something. So when we're talking about price, it doesn't actually shift any of the curves. It just shifts, or it doesn't shift. It just kind of changes like how much of the good that the suppliers want to supply, or how much of the good that the demanders want to supply.
because you can draw a line anywhere here. Let's say you pick price is $7. This whole thing here, that's what happens when the price goes to $7. So this line is the price, and this line intersects the supply curve right here. So that's going to be the quantity that the sellers want to give to the market for people to buy. But over here, where the price line hits the demand curve, that's how many products the buyers want to buy. The reason that the price at equilibrium is the price that both buyers and sellers agree on is because, as you can see, where the price hits the demand curve and where the price hits the supply curve, they're the same number. So they agree on the same price.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I look at these three, I'm going to group this one, and this one together. So these are all, when Micaela, she was talking about taste, these are all part of taste. And I thought this one was kind of interesting because mostly when you think about a good that like everyone has, it's because everyone thinks it's a great good. But I was like reading this, everyone like has heard of like I guess the company Supreme, right? It's how like not a lot of people have it. And because not a lot of people have it, that makes a lot of people want to have it more. So I thought that was like an interesting thing because that's just part of taste, but it's in a way that a lot of people want to think of it. And then quality of the good, that's just taste again too. Like you want to buy a good that's like the highest quality. And then the popularity is basically like the same as how many people already have it. And then the number of people nearby, that's just, that, Micaela was talking about that earlier, how like, when there's more people in a society, the demand curve will shift rightward. So she used the example like schools. And then moving further over here, here Micaela, do you want to explain some of these? I can read this one.
Yeah. So the amount of producers who make it. So let's go back to our graph over here. Remember when I said, or not me, Connor was talking about the number of sellers? That's the exact same thing. So that would shift. Let's say there's less producers. That's a decrease, so that would shift the supply curve left. Or let's say there's more producers, then that's an increase, so that would shift the supply curve rightward. The amount of material in the world, yeah. So let's say, yeah, that's an input price like Connor was talking about when he was talking about the supply curves. So let's say you're making orange juice and the price of oranges skyrockets and goes up to $1,000. Then the supply will shift left because it's more expensive to supply orange juice, and suppliers aren't going to want to supply it to the market because it's so expensive and there's not enough oranges.
Alright, so I was just reading this one. So it says, the sellers make a profit from peaches, so they raise it. I'm assuming when you say raise it, you mean the price.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no one else buys from that. So yeah, it's kind of like the suppliers are getting greedy. They make money, and all of a sudden they don't want to sell. They don't want to sell their goods. So let's say they were selling peaches originally at $10 a peach, and then that made the quantity sold. Let's say that was just 10. Let's keep the math easy. So they're selling 10 peaches at $10, and all of a sudden they make some money, and now they're like, we can sell peaches for more money. So they raise the price up to, let's say, $100 a peach, and at this point, it makes it so you can see that if I draw a straight line out from this point, it will never intersect with the demand curve, so that'll show that 0 people are going to buy it at this point. So that was an interesting point, and just these are kind of stuff we went over before, like number of buyers. That's the one that Micaela used with the school example. Taste, yeah, that's a great one. We already talked about that. And then the wait time of parts is who wrote that one up? All right. Well, whoever wrote that up? I'm just gonna assume they mean like a company's building like a car or something, and they need to order a part to fix a car. So I guess that's kind of like an input price kind of thing, but I don't know how much that would shift the market, because if a car manufacturer really needs that piece, just because the wait time is high, it's not going to make them not want to buy that. They might just look for a different place to buy that piece at.
Okay, so now we're going to take a really quick quiz. So I'm just going to explain the directions real quick. So first, on the front, you're going to see a sorting. So there's a bunch of options, and they're all lettered. So you're just going to put the letters in the supply or demand column. So basically you're just saying, it'll give you an example. The price of candy goes down. All you're saying is which curve that'll shift. So you have to think, oh, will this affect the people buying it, the demand, or will this affect the people who are selling it, the supply? So you just put the letter in the supply or demand column. On the back, all you're going to do is fill in the blank, and the only options are right or left. So remember, right is increase, left is decrease. You can look at this graph up here if you need to visualize it a little bit.
There you go. Here you are. Just ignore H. Alright, we'll cross it out. So we're gonna go over the answers real fast. If you guys are ready. If you're not, it's no big deal. So on the first side, the supply and demand part of it, in the supply side, it's F, G, H, C, and then on the demand side, it's A, B, D, E.
Remember, we also crossed out H, so you don't have to have H in your supply.
Yeah, we didn't. And did anyone get them all right for that?
Nice.
Nice. And then for question number two, it's for A, it's left, and that just has to do with like taste. For B, it's right, and that's just the population, just the number of buyers. And then for C, it's left, because that's just input prices. And then for D, it's right, because it's technology making creating the burgers actually easier.
Hang tight a sec,
yeah.
guys.
No, that was.
Are you done?
Yeah.
That was it?
Yeah.
I mean, impeccable.
Yeah. All right. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you guys.
This was great.
work.
So,
What do you guys say?
Thank you.
You guys can keep your quizzes and do whatever you want with them.
Hey guys, if you want your math quizzes from me, come grab them. If you want your math quizzes, come grab them. Friendly?
do you want me to raise this?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you. True. Fractions will be due in like 2 days. And B. Dana, you want yours?
Oh, yeah.
Drop. Friendly, yours is
Oh, come on, Micaela,
You give that to your
You
friends?
missed it. You great.
I thought that was mine. I didn't see the score. I
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was
Oh, yeah. Here's that man.
Find out.
Oh, wow.
Aiden, this is really important, okay? Aiden, this is really important. It's really important. Do the infographic. Do the infographic.
Let's go. Let's go. Eva, I swear I didn't look.
The one thing I want to, this is really,
I thought
this
she
isn't
said-
why I called you, but do you know what I mean by that? You sure?
But, like-
Okay, why I really called you.
My bad. This Brittany, this isn't even mine.
Like I like
Where
understand why,
Aiden's
like,
tutor has
like,
tests.
showing up and like
Yeah.
YouTube so much. It's like just sitting
Yeah.
well, I knew it's like you have it multiple times, but they were talking about it different one. Like I know, like they sell it more, they put the price up, nobody buys it, and they put it back